years of loyalty, Elizabeth expected a phone call or her letter of resignation practically every day. Being Luke's nanny came with a lot of baggage. Then again, so did being Luke's adoptive parent. "Elizabeth, are you still there?" "Yes." She was losing concentration. "Sorry, what did you say?" "I asked you what car she took." Elizabeth rolled her eyes. "The same one, Marie. The same bloody car as last week, and the week before, and the week before that." Marie remained firm. "Which is the—" "BMW," she interrupted. "The same damn 330 black BMW Cabriolet." "What condition was she in?" "Very shiny. I just washed her," Elizabeth replied cheekily. "Great. And what condition was Saoirse in?" "The usual one." "Intoxicated." "That's the one." Elizabeth stood up and walked down the hall to the kitchen. Her sun trap. Her heels against the marble floor echoed loudly in the empty, high-ceilinged room. Everything was in its place. The room was hot from the sun's glare through the glass of the conservatory. Elizabeth's tired eyes squinted in the brightness. The spotless kitchen gleamed. The black granite countertops sparkled. The chrome fittings mirrored the bright day. A stainless steel and walnut heaven. She headed straight to the espresso machine. Her saviour, needing an injection of life into her exhausted body. She opened the kitchen cabinet and took out a small beige coffee cup. Before closing the press, she turned a cup round so that the handle was on the right side, like all the others. She slid open the long steel cutlery drawer, noticed a knife in the fork compartment, put it back in its rightful place, retrieved a spoon, and slid it shut. From the corner of her eye she saw the hand towel messily strewn over the handle of the cooker. She threw the crumpled cloth into the utility room, retrieved a fresh towel from the neat pile in the press, folded it exactly in half, and draped it over the cooker handle. Everything had its place. She placed the steaming espresso cup on a marble coaster to protect the glass kitchen table. She smoothed out her trousers, removed a piece of fluff from her jacket, sat down in the conservatory, and looked out at her long swathe of garden and the rolling green hills beyond, which seemed to stretch on forever. 40 shades of green, gold, and brown. She breathed in the rich aroma of her steaming espresso and immediately felt revived. She pictured her sister racing over the hills with the top down on Elizabeth's convertible, arms in the air, eyes closed, flame red hair blowing in the wind, believing she was free. Saoirse meant freedom in Irish. The name had been chosen by their mother in her last desperate attempt to make the duties of motherhood she despised so much seem less like a punishment. She felt by naming her this, her second daughter could some way bring her freedom from the shackles of marriage, motherhood, responsibility, reality. Elizabeth and Saoirse's mother, Grania, had met her father when Grania was just 16. She was travelling through the town with a group of poets, musicians, and dreamers, and got talking to Brendan Egan, a farmer in the local pub. He was 12 years her senior, and was enthralled by her wild, mysterious ways and carefree nature. She was flattered, and so they married. At 18, they had their first child, Elizabeth. As it turned out, her mother couldn't be tamed, and found it increasingly frustrating being held in the sleepy town, nestled in the hills she had only ever intended to pass through. A crying baby and sleepless nights drove her further and further away in her head. Dreams of her own personal freedom became confused with her reality, and she started to go missing for days at a time. She went exploring, discovering places and other people. For as long as Elizabeth could remember, she looked after herself and her silent, brooding father, and didn't ask when her mother would be home. She knew in her heart that her mother would eventually return, cheeks flushed, eyes bright, and speaking breathlessly of the world and all it had to offer. She would waft into their lives like a fresh summer breeze, bringing excitement and hope. The feel of their bungalow farmhouse always changed when she returned. The four walls absorbed her enthusiasm. Elizabeth would sit at the end of her mother's bed, listening to stories, giddy with delight. This ambience would last for only a few days, until her mother quickly tired of sharing stories rather than making new ones. When Elizabeth was 12 years old, her mother became pregnant again, and, despite the newborn baby being named Saoirse, this child didn't offer the freedom her mother craved, and so she set off on another expedition, and didn't return. Her father, Brendan, had no interest in the new baby, and waited in silence by the fire for his wife to return, reading his paper but never turning the page. For years, forever. Soon Saoirse became Elizabeth's responsibility. Saoirse had inherited her father's Celtic looks of strawberry blonde hair and fair skin, while Elizabeth was the image of her mother, olive skin, chocolate hair, almost black eyes, in their blood from the Spanish influence thousands of years before. As she grew from adolescence, Elizabeth resembled her mother more and more, and she knew her father found it difficult. She grew to hate herself for it, and along with making the effort of trying to have conversations with her father, she tried even harder to prove, to her father and to herself, that she was nothing like her mother, that she was capable of loyalty. When Elizabeth finished school at 18, she was faced with the choice of moving to Cork to attend university, a decision that took all her courage to make. Her father regarded her acceptance of the course as abandonment. He saw any friendship she created with anyone as abandonment. He craved attention, always demanding to be the only person in his daughters' lives, as though that would prevent them from moving away from him. Well, he almost succeeded, and certainly was part of the reason for Elizabeth's lack of a social life or circle of friends. She had been conditioned to walk away when polite conversation was started, knowing she would pay for any unnecessary time spent away from the farm with sullen words and disapproving glares. In any case, looking after Saoirse as well as going to school was a full-time job. Nevertheless, Brendan accused her of being like her mother, of thinking she was above him, and superior to Ballynagriha. She had begun to understand how her mother must have felt living in such a suffocating home, where she felt bored and trapped by marriage and motherhood. Like her mother, she found the small town claustrophobic. It was a place where every action of every person was monitored, frowned upon, commented on, kept and stored for gossip. A place that managed to attract the tourists but repelled the women of the Egan family. Elizabeth felt the dull farmhouse was dipped in darkness, with no sense of time. "And Luke, where is he?" Marie asked over the phone, bringing Elizabeth swiftly back to the present. Elizabeth replied bitterly, "Do you really think Saoirse would take him with her?" Silence. Elizabeth sighed. "He's here." Saoirse was more than just a name to call Elizabeth's sister. To her sister it was an identity, a way of life. Everything the name represented was passed into her blood. She was fiery, independent, wild and free. Saoirse followed the pattern of the mother she could not remember, to such a degree that Elizabeth found herself watching Saoirse to keep her from disappearing like their mother. But Elizabeth kept losing sight of her. Saoirse became pregnant at 16, and no one knew who the father was, not even Saoirse. Once she had the baby, she didn't care much for naming him, but, when pressed, she gave her baby boy a name that was like a wish. Lucky. So Elizabeth named him Luke. And at the age of 28, Elizabeth found herself once again responsible for a child who wasn't her own. There was never so much as a flicker of recognition in Saoirse's eyes when she looked at Luke. It startled Elizabeth to see that there was no bond, no connection at all. Granted, Elizabeth had made a pact with herself never to have children.